Welcome, everyone. I'm Mikita Kruse, the live stream host of all-creatures.org. All-creatures.org was founded in 1998 by Pastor Frank Hoffman and his first wife, Mary, and launched as the first pioneer website in the United States for faith-based animal rights veganism. Today, led by our executive director, Tams Nicholson, we exist for all people seeking current animal rights vegan resources and offer decades of free animal rights and vegan content, including a huge repository of vegan sermons and Bible commentaries, animal rights strategies, free vegan author books, recipes, upcoming events around the world, and the works of various vegan authors, poets, and artists. We host current sites for almost 20 vegan and animal rights organizations, including Stop Crush, Unparalleled Suffering, and the Committee to Abolish Sports Hunting. We also maintain nearly 25 archival sites from animal rights, vegan activism of past decades. The bottom line is that we work to unite compassionate and empathetic humans across the globe from the past and present who honor the dignity of each and every creature so that all beings thrive on a flourishing planet Earth. So I'm very honored to welcome today Ginny Mikita. She is actually Reverend Ginny Mikita, and Ginny is so special. When you hear about her journey, she started out in law, and now she is working almost on a whole nother space. So this is a true honor for me to listen to this story, and for all of us who might think we're stuck in one space and not knowing what the future will bring. Well, to talk to Reverend Ginny, it might be something that is way out there that we don't see. So welcome, Reverend Ginny. I'm so honored to have you with us. And I'd just love to start out with a little prayer, if you would honor us with that, to create a safe, beautiful, divine space for us.
I would be honored to do so. If you're comfortable, close your eyes, soften your gaze. Take the deepest breath you've taken all day. In through the nose and out through the mouth. And leave whatever you came into this space with outside for this sacred time that we have together. May the Spirit's presence, which we know is here, guide our conversation and illuminate us to greater love. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much. Well, Lee, thanks for joining us. And Lee is a Jane, and so he's very kind. I love the Janes. So thanks for watching us, Lee. And everyone, please let us know where you're joining from. And let's get right into it. I'd love to, Reverend Ginny, would you tell us a little bit more about what created this shift in your life? As a little girl, perhaps, were you taught to love animals in a way that was more so than other children?
That's a great question. My dad was in the Air Force. We moved every 2 years. And my love for animals, I'm not really sure. I have to believe it was spirit-led, because my family was sort of a typical, if there is such a thing, American military family. We moved. Oftentimes we would have an animal companion, a dog perhaps, that was part of our lives. But because we kept moving and we moved overseas and back and forth, oftentimes those animals weren't able to go with us. But I would find other strays to bring home. And that started very early. My first recollection of actually doing animal activism as a child. I was on my way. We were living in Nevada at the time. There's an Air Force base in Las Vegas. And I was on my way to school, walking to school, and found a bag of kittens in a bush and took those to my school nurse, thinking, that's what you do. That's what nurses do. And I will not ever forget her response, which was, why did you bring them here? I'm going to call your mom. It was a shaming kind of thing. And it also didn't make any sense to me as a child, like nurses are helpers, nurses, that kind of thing. And so it was my first experience with how, the cognitive dissonance that we all reside in, some more than others, in terms of deciding who we're helping and who are not worth helping. But so that was my first. We bottle fed those little ones and adopted them all out, and so that was my first experience. My mom is a social worker, so she's got a heart of gold, and so I think I got a lot of that from her.
Well, that's beautiful. I'm glad there was a happy ending. I got scared for a second. It is very surprising, because you would think of nurses as, it's very easy for me to say, well, all nurses are very compassionate and would always extend kindness to all. But that's not the world we live in. And so I'm thankful for you as a little girl that you did what you needed to do for those little kittens.
Yes. Yeah.
So let me ask you this. As a little girl, did you think, I want to get into law? Like, let's just say like a little 10 or 5-year-old girl, or, 12-year-old girl. Did you think, I want to get into this legal system?
No, I did not. I actually thought I wanted to be a veterinarian, and then discovered that I was really allergic to many breeds of cats and horses. And so then that was off the table. I still didn't think about law until much later. I was in college and took a class called Contemporary Moral Issues. I was at the University of Florida, and one of our assignments, I was really interested in fighting against the death penalty. University of Florida resides very close, it's situated very close to the electric chair in Florida. And so that's what I thought I was taking the class for. And one of the assignments for us, we spent a week on animal rights issues, and we read Animal Liberation. And my life changed forever. That was the moment that I can distinctly remember going home and reading and crying that I didn't know all of this, particularly about factory farming. I think I had this sense like, I'm fairly intelligent. I'm in college. I've lived all over the world. How did I not know this? So that was a crisis point also, but it led me ultimately to deciding it. I actually decided to go to law school for this very reason after that, and looked for schools. And at that time, there were no animal law programs. So that wasn't even in existence then. So I ended up finding my place at Notre Dame as a non-Catholic because of the social justice bent of the school. I received, back in the day, we'd actually get hard copies of catalogs when you were looking at schools. And I remember thinking, this was the only catalog that had any reference to social justice work. It wasn't about animals, but it was about other issues that were significant and important in the day. And so I thought, this looks like the best that as good as it's going to get in terms of finding my place, a home in a law school that would be receptive. I wrote my law school application and actually wrote about the plight of chickens and their debeaking in factory farming. And so I knew the school knew what I was all about. I didn't hide that going in, but I had some interesting experiences once I arrived, just given some of the challenges that the school had with the idea of doing work on behalf of more than human animals. That at that, at that moment in time in the late 80s, the Catholic Church's teaching, at least within the Notre Dame community, was that animals didn't have souls. And so this was not worth our time. And so that I could go on. I mean, the beauty of this is it's changing. I'm seeing that. I mean, this is the advantage of being 60 now, is that I can see all these places of growth and transformation, from the individual to the corporate. And it just continues to hearten me in knowing that we are moving. The arc of justice is bending and forward. So.
Yes, definitely. Because when you're talking about that, the Catholic Church, I grew up Catholic, and so I never really learned anything in the catechism and everything about treating animals in a divine way. But what's so funny is I had an experience like yours. I found a little dog. When someone called me, there's a dog, and so they said, "Come and rescue this little dog," and this little dog's back had been like burnt, singed off. Oh. And so I happened to be right by the church that I was going to. And the dog, it wasn't like in like a horrible condition where I needed to take him to the vet right then. So I ran to the priest. I'm not priest, but this was a Methodist church. And I thought, well, this friend of mine was the Reverend and I said, please, can you make an announcement for help for this little dog, right? I found this little dog I don't know what's going on. And I don't remember the exact what he said to me. And this was my good friend. He just ran into church basically blew me off. And I still to this day, that was something that is incredible, because again, like the nurse, this person is in a helping position. And how could this be?
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Were you able to get help for the dog?
I ended up taking the little dog home and getting him adopted out. Oh. So yes, it all worked out. And it makes me really grateful for people like you, Ginny, with big hearts. Because if I known if you were there, I would have been like, "Oh, Reverend Ginny, look." You would have been, "Okay, let's do something here."
Yeah, let's do something, but not go to a school nurse. We'll go somewhere else.
Right. That's funny, but yes. All right. Well, thank you for sharing those stories. And let me ask you this. When you first went vegan, how old were you? And did you have supports in your family and friends?
Yeah. So when we read Animal Liberation, that was literally that at that moment, I became a vegetarian. So it was a big deal. My dad was an Air Force fighter pilot, big steak and potatoes kind of guy and family. So this was pretty radical to be a vegetarian at that. And at that time, this is like in the early 80s, there were very few supports, and certainly very limited options in terms of food, ready-made. And it was all new to me. So that was in 1983. And I kind of continued to sort of dip my toe into veganism, but just really didn't make that leap until 1993. In 1993, I actually worked as in-house counsel for PETA for a bit. And part of the employment contract included a provision that we would commit to a vegan diet. And so then it was easier to do. I had somebody, it was expected, but I also was I moved out to DC. And so there were a lot of options. So for the first time I was able to, I can remember when I first started, I can remember when I don't know if they were called not dogs, but they were some sort of faux hot dog that literally were bright pink. I mean, frightening colors, and enough to make you think, like, what am I eating? And so we've come so far in terms of available options for cooking and other things. But it was 1993, so a good solid, whatever it's been now, 30 something years. Yeah. So
I like that story. And I don't think I want to eat bright pink dogs either. So
yeah, it's really changed. It's really amazing these days. I know one of the questions that you'd shared that you sometimes ask is, what do you say to folks that are considering this? And the beauty of this now is that the food is there. And so, I mean, even your local grocery store, big chains are carrying amazing options. And so that seems to me it's no longer a reason not to give it a try. And so it feels like that, the bigger issues that remain for me that I just have to continue to navigate are being invited over to someone's home or that kind of thing. And I've just learned all of these little tools that to manage my own diet in a way that is attractive and not because I know how it feels to have someone tell you to do something, even when you know it's right. It's different than being invited. And so I really like to, work through attraction and not demanding folks change, because I don't think that works. So.
Yes, no, that's a very good point. I really love the word inviting, because I was just talking to Dr. Angela Crawford, who is and we were talking about veganism and specifically using that word inviting.
Mm-hmm.
And how important it is to invite people to hear more instead of, and coming from a different place. And it's so funny. Again, I think, go think of the law compared to the chaplain, how different that is.
Yes.
And, and then this whole.
Right. Yeah. Really, really good point. I mean, that to make arguments in my career in my law career, the way that I approach that is very different than I do as a chaplain. But they both inform one another. I have found that I am able to do things. For example, I'm working right now with the Non-Human Rights Project on a case involving chimpanzees. And one of the things that I asked them when we were looking at the briefing for this case, I really gently pushed for including the spirituality of chimpanzees in our legal brief with the Court of Appeals, because I feel like those are things that need to continue to be talked about and normalized. And so the spirituality in my chaplaincy work is informing my legal work, and vice versa. I mean, I facilitate a grief group for animal companion loss. I've been doing that for many years, monthly, and oftentimes I'll have to, make sure that I don't have my lawyer hat on, because I had somebody come in the other day. This is just the first I'd heard of this in all of my years of doing this. Her veterinarian lost her dog's ashes. And so that was a place where I'm like, wow, there's a legal issue here too. But then it also created this opportunity for really exploring what those mean, which is really an interesting, it was a second loss for her. I mean, it was hard enough that she'd had her dog die, but then to have the ashes lost, then it became, okay, what does this mean? And can we make meaning out of this experience, even without an embodied sense of this dog still with her. So I'm
Yeah, that's
many different directions. You're going to have to rein me in.
no, I love the expansiveness of the conversation. Definitely. I mean, how to go from here to here, I mean, to take the step from this big two losses into peace. How does one get there? Right.
Right. And that was the reason I left when I'm still practicing law, but I went to seminary after being out for a period of years and realizing that the way to real transformation not even the way I did all these things for trying to strengthen animal cruelty laws and continuing to hold veterinarians accountable and all of these things. But a lot of things, there are too many points at which someone has discretion. So for animal cruelty cases, the police can decide they're not gonna follow up or press charges. The prosecuting attorney can say, I'm not gonna follow through. The judge can say, I don't really see a problem here. I mean, there were too many places along the way. And I thought, what really needs to happen is we need to transform hearts. And so seminary seemed like the next step for that, to really be focused on that. And I'm Christian. I belong to United Church of Christ congregation here in Michigan. And when I'm invited to share a message, I've got my earrings on right now from one of them. I did one on just pigeons and I can't remember the title, something like God's Messengers, but I take whatever, look at those opportunities to be able to really apply what I believe to be the Christian mandate toward our more than human animal companions with whom we share the earth in a very direct way with my congregation, with whom that I'm part of. I'm not the pastor, but and that's been really exciting to me, because initially I got out of seminary thinking I can't believe that it's not easier with Christians. I found myself really, really, really struggling with that. Like,
that's a very hard one.
It doesn't feel like a big leap to me. So I'm thinking, this is so challenging to me. And so that's part of why I started Animal Blessings, is to do things. I'm in communities, in secular environments and in sacred environments. They're all sacred, but secular within church buildings, outside of church buildings, in ballparks, doing blessings of the animals and continuing to share that message about why we do this. So anyways, again, I'm off on a tangent.
I love it. It's all good. And please, anybody that's watching, please subscribe. And we're going to have questions here in a little bit. But let me ask you this, just to go back really quick. Lee asked, is that Notre Dame in Indiana that you were talking about?
It is. Yes. Yeah. Yes, it was. And I consider that a big part of my spiritual formation. Even as a non-Catholic, I can remember seeing priests in training behind this wall. And I was so curious about that. And I would walk the two lakes, because Notre Dame's name is actually Notre Dame du Lac, of Our Lady of the Two Lakes. And so that I am so grateful to that community for what the gifts that I received from Notre Dame. And part of it was a launch into my own spiritual life in a much deeper way. Kind of had a little bit of holy envy going on with the Catholics, just the sense of all the traditions and the beauty of the saints and other things that weren't part of my tradition. I grew up Air Force Protestant. We just would go to the chapel on Air Force bases, and there was just there was a Catholic mass at 10, and then the crucifix would rise into the roof, and a Jesus-free cross would drop down. literal ascension every Sunday, and then the Protestant service would start, and it'd be anybody who was Christian but not Catholic that would be at that service. So.
That's interesting. I love that.
Yeah.
Well, I love what you said also about, I think, reaching people in a different way. Now, there was a quote, Dr. Rao of Climate Healers he mentioned this quote, and it was someone saying that they used to think that we had to heal Mother Earth with science. We had to do all this, get this data, do all this. But then they realized it's not the science, it's the compassion, it's the love, right? And just like you're saying, that's the way to heal, right? I mean, sure, we can set up all sorts of laws, but if people don't care, they're not going to follow the laws.
That's right. And even even as simple as, you're talking about all the science of healing the earth. If I'm just walking down the street with my dogs and see a piece of trash and pick it up, that's doing something in that moment. And that does come from, as you're saying, it's about having your heart transformed and being aware. And so, yeah, I think there's a lot to be said for that. And yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. How does a piece of not eating creatures manifest in your life today?
Well, in my kitchen, I actually have a framed print that says, "World peace begins in the kitchen." And so I think, it's hard to describe, except it's an energy. It's a feeling of just knowing that when I sit down to eat a meal, I'm not contributing to the cruelty. What I eat is, we all talk about that. You are what you eat. I don't want to eat cruelty and be part of that in any way. And it even extends to our dogs. I have 2 English Shepherds. They're vegan. And I have a lot of people, dogs can't do that. I'm like, they're as healthy as can be. They're 6 and they're beautiful. And so, because that's another example of it. I think there's no way I'm going to put like ground up animals into my dog's bowls in my kitchen. And so it's everywhere. I really do try to live a vegan lifestyle, and there's just peace in knowing that I'm not contributing, that just for me. And actually for new vegans, I always, for them, I share, listen, once you've made the commitment and that's your why, it is so much easier, because every time you sit down, if you're remembering why you're doing this, and for me, that has been the reason all along. The health benefits have been a complete, silver lining in all of this. I can't remember the last time. I'm 60. I can't remember the last time I was sick. And I think I have to believe there's something to that. I really do, and so I often will tell people, just give it a try, see how you feel. And, but yeah,
That's very true. The health benefits are incredible.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. If someone's watching and they're very sad about the animals and they don't know how to handle the despair, or they can't sleep at night, what would you say to them?
Oh, that is so hard. It is so hard, because I'm going to tell you another story, but it's related. For many years in my legal practice, I also represented neglected and abused children. I was on the court appointment list to represent them in their neglect and abuse cases. And I had the hardest time with this. One of the court-appointed special advocates, the Casas, that worked with me at one point, brought me all these little Guatemalan dolls They were all in a row, and she had them tucked into a little bed with a blanket. And she gave me that gift and said, put this on your nightstand at night and know that they are held. They are held by God. Spirit has got this. Your job is to get rest and get up and do it again tomorrow. So much of this is about doing what I can, and also remembering that one of the most important things I can do is pray. I oftentimes forget about that piece and jump right into action. And I'll have someone say to me, have you prayed about it? And it's that the one thing that is the most important in all of this is that. And it's about praying for an outcome that maybe I can't imagine with my little brain. It's praying for peace for myself so that I can continue to do the work. It's praying for the individual animals. I mean, it is really hard. There is so much sorrow in the world. And so that's a great question. It's a beautiful question. And it's something that I wish I had a magic wand and had an answer that would resolve that heart hurt. But one of the things for me that helps most is to take action in some way, aside from praying, to take action to help one animal. Whoever I've got, if I see a spider in the office and I let that spider out, that's an action step right there, that little guy. In fact, in my application for law school, I quoted Ralph Waldo Emerson had a poem called Success. And at the end, it said, success will be to know that one life breathed easier because I lived. And so I feel like that's the goal. Sometimes it's about just narrowing it and getting to that one creature in front of you and making their life a little bit better.
I love that. That is so true. And I think about the spiders now. I mean, more so because I do forest bathing now, and really being mindful about the leaves and everything. Even just saying hello to a little leaf will change your life. It is life changing what you're saying. When you're giving respect and love to one tiny being, it's powerful.
Yeah, it really is. I had a little encounter with a praying mantis this week who was in my driveway. I was bringing the garbage can in, and I saw what looked like, he was about 4 inches long, looked like a leaf because he had the green, but it was like a leaf that was walking, which threw me. So I put the garbage can away and came back out, got really low on the ground. And we just looked at each other. His little head, you know how they can turn like 180 degrees. He's looking at me with these big eyes, and I'm thinking, he's thinking I have big eyes. We're both looking at each other. But it was just this moment of like, wow, are you ever awesome? Like the wonders of the world sometimes, that's a moment. And it was, and he carried on, and I went in and researched praying mantises because I thought I don't know enough about them. So
I love that. Yeah. And those moments they're happening every second.
Yeah.
And so many times we're going through life and just rushing through life, and we're missing, like I see the trees outside waving to me, and I can easily walk by that and not even notice their love.
No. With my dogs, the shepherds, both of them, Blaze and Ember are their names. Blaze is a therapy dog too. So she's just got them. Oh my gosh, they're beautiful. But we'll be out walking, and then they'll both stop and look, and I don't even see what they're looking at. And so I have been, blessed to see sandhill cranes I would have missed, squirrels, of course, turkeys. They lay eyes on them, and all of a sudden we're in this world together. But I thought they keep me looking around too, which has been really great.
Yes, I love that. That's what we need to do, some exercises following our dogs or cats around and see
Yeah,
what they see.
yeah, right, right. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. So, speaking of cats and dogs and other pets, you are an animal chaplain. So, can you tell us what is an animal chaplain?
Yeah, yeah. So, animal chaplains provide spiritual support for humans and animals. I like to call them more than human animals because we're all animals, using ritual and ceremony and tools of companionship. I went to an interfaith seminary, so I have some knowledge of other practices. Um, but that's really what it is. It's a little of everything. I'm doing. This is a kind of a new thing. I do a lot of different things with animals and with their human companions, but I've got something kind of new coming up. Someone invited me to be a grief guide on a pet memorial sunset cruise on a body of water in northern Michigan. So that's happening next month. So I've had some really lovely opportunities to do things not only one-on-one, but in bigger settings. And but yeah, so we're doing a little bit of everything and hoping to increase that, that human animal bond in a spiritual way.
Well, that's beautiful. I know people that struggle for years to get over, or I don't even know if that's the word. I mean, we want to say we want to get rid of the pain of a loss from
Yeah,
a pet. But I mean, that really never happens. I
no,
don't think there's always, no matter how much I accept it, you still miss them.
yeah,
So, what would you say to someone right now that just says, I can't get past this? I don't know what to do. I can't get over the thought that they're gone and I'm just
yeah,
sinking into that despair. What would you say to that person?
yeah. Well, I can tell you from just the number of years I've been facilitating a grief support group, I believe grief support groups are one of the most beautiful tools out there. I have seen folks come in that hung on to it for 3 years, and they finally said, I just feel like I can't continue to move forward because I think grief is transformed. You're right. You don't get over it. You might get a little through it, but more than anything, it's transformed into something that you can live with a certain degree of peace, and find meaning making from the experience that maybe you get caught. It's so hard in those early days. But one of the beautiful things about sitting with a group of people is that everyone gets it. There's no need to explain. You don't need to use words. I have people say, I don't think I can talk if I come. And I always share, no one needs to talk. Just your presence is support for someone else. And one of the metaphors I kind of use is folks show up and they've got a platter that's really heavy of their own grief. And the beauty of a support group is that everyone, as that person is sharing, takes a little bit off of that and lightens that load. We all share one another's, and it makes it manageable. But I can't stress that enough. And in person, if possible, I offer both. I have an online group actually that's meeting tonight, but I had my in-person group earlier this week, and it's just a powerful experience. And that's a place where I see spirit doing things I could not have imagined. That the people that come together are the people that need to be there with one another. It's amazing and magical because I don't even require anybody to register. I like to know they're going to be there, but it's open. There's a warm invitation to anyone who thinks they might benefit. And I've had things happen that just didn't, I thought I couldn't have I couldn't have orchestrated this more beautifully than the Holy Spirit did. Having a family come with teenagers and another family with teenagers when I rarely get teenagers, and they both show up on the same, that kind of thing, but I think that is one of the best things to do. And there's so many available, and oftentimes they're free. So it's a resource that can be taken advantage of by anyone. But I think it just helps to sit with others and hear the stories and know. The only ground rule for my group is that I tell folks, you can't start a sentence with, I know this sounds crazy. That is just not allowed. Nothing is crazy. Nothing is crazy. If you're sleeping with your dog's blanket, that is not crazy. So.
That's beautiful. No, that reminds me of when my little dog passed recently, a few years ago. Sleeping with his picture made me feel so much better. And you're right. And then I did lead a grief Zoom group for a while.
Yeah.
And it was a powerful experience, definitely. And its vulnerability is so beautiful, and caring hearts are so beautiful. And when you're in that space, it is transformational and healing.
It is. I mean, I feel like oftentimes I'll hear people say, I have been more honest in this group of strangers than I have with anyone that's close to me in my life, because it's safe. And they're, not at risk of someone saying, when are you going to get another dog, or something that's well-intentioned but really hurtful. So yeah, I'm a big group cheerleader.
Yes. And so when is the next group when is the next group tonight?
There's one at, it's at 6:30 Eastern time tonight. And
how do people show up for that?
You know what? That's I'm going to just give you my email address and they can email me. That's going to be easiest. There is a registration thing, but I think because it's after 12, it won't take. So, but yeah, my email address is Ginny@animalblessings.love.
Ginny.
Yeah, Ginny.
Ginny at animalblessings.love. Okay.
Yeah, so anyone's welcome, and we'd love to see you. Yeah, it's
wonderful. Well, I bet you have some very memorable moments in your vegan activism and chaplain life. What would you say is one of those most memorable moments? That might be hard to answer.
Yeah. I think the simple answer to that is every time I have like a special dish that's coming in a public place, on an airplane, at a conference, and having everybody go, how did you get that? I love that question. Like, how did you end up with that food? And we've all got, but one of my best moments was when I was in seminary, I took a class on Revelation, and my professor at the end because of course I made the case for a vegan heaven, a vegan, this is what we're heading toward, and this is but using biblical scripture. I mean, I didn't just make this up. I really made that case. And at the end, he wrote something. He said, I need to tell you that I can no longer look at my golden retriever without looking into his eyes and seeing something I never thought before. And I've gone vegetarian. That was one of those moments like, oh my gosh, this is the best, I mean, because every paper I did, I found a way to do something related to animal well-being and really making the case for them biblically. And they wouldn't let me do an animal funeral I was in a United Methodist Seminary first, and I wanted to do an animal funeral. And they wouldn't allow that. But then when I got into the Interfaith Seminary I was able to do that. So there was some redemption there. But so that Revelation professor was the best.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, what about when you were in when before I say this, please put your questions up if you want any questions answered by Ginny. But when you were at Notre Dame, did you see shifts? Were people curious, and did they actually, like this person you just told us about?
Yeah.
Was it, how was the awareness?
Well, the best example of that. So after my first year, they had a program called the Student Funded Fellowship Program. And what that was is students who were going to be going to work for high-end law firms could pledge a day of their salary that summer to people going to work for nonprofits. I was going out to work for the farm animal reform movement in Bethesda. And so I applied for a fellowship, and the students initially are the ones they decide who gets those fellowship funds. And I was granted one, and then the administration pulled it because of this isn't benefiting human beings argument. The animals don't have souls. And the students in my class went to bat for it. And these were not vegetarians. But that moment was, to me, really telling that there was already a shift taking place. So this would have been in like 1989. And I think that, I've always held on to that in the end, the right thing was done. But yeah.
That's beautiful. I love that.
Well, I think it's happening,
It is happening. And but when you run into people that say, well, cats are different than cows. They were meant to be eaten. That's what God put them here for. What would you say to that person?
That's a tough one, because of course I absolutely do not believe that. I don't believe it's true biblically. And I believe all beings are spiritual beings. We're all created in the image of God. And yeah, it's a tough case. It's interesting because I noticed that there's all this talk about what happened the other night with the debate. And so I did see some people starting to say, but wait a minute. Everyone's outraged about talking about eating cats and dogs, but look at what you got on your plate tonight. Which of course, I wouldn't do that on social media. That's not my style, but I thought it. That there's that cognitive dissonance showing up in grand form this week. Like really outraged, but so I believe that when someone gets to know an animal, know about an animal, or meet an animal, that there's a possibility for shift. And so I encourage folks to go to like farm sanctuary, meet some of the animals that are there and learn their stories. It's much harder to put those things aside once you've had some sort of an interaction with an actual animal of a species and gotten to know them. So I know there's in the scientific community, so many people that don't name animals, that's anthropomorphizing them. I love names because each of them are individual. And I think once someone has a name, it is really hard to dismiss them. But yeah, I those arguments are, as Kamala said the other, they're tired arguments that we've had to deal with as Christians for a long time. And the reality is, if you just even for a moment if I think for a moment about what the Jesus whom I know, what he would do, I just can't for a million years imagine that he'd be like, yeah, factory farming, that's exactly what I had in mind. So it's hard. It's a hard conversation to have, especially with and I sometimes I'm like, well, okay, let's just imagine that we don't know. Isn't it always better to err on the side of grace and compassion? Like when people say, well, they don't feel, I'm like, we don't know that. So let's just imagine that we find out later they do. Then isn't it better just on this end of that to err on the side of compassion?
I say yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So
Wonderful. I want to get to some of these comments here. JJ is watching, and Lee's saying that he grew up Methodist, and JJ is saying hi, and then Lee is saying this little slug in my picture greeted me at my door. It was so great meeting you.
Oh, that's lovely.
That is sweet. Thank you for sharing that, Lee. And he's saying, "Have you talked about interfaith? Are you familiar with the Parliament of Religions?"
I was actually there. Yes, I was there and actually manned the table with the gal that I love that slug picture. I just saw that off to the side there. That's so cute. But yes, yeah, I was there this year. And were you there? Lee, were you there?
That's a good question. Can you tell us about that experience?
Oh my gosh, it was amazing. The most amazing thing for me, actually. Shit. I was going to say, were you there? Because the Sikhs, I think but they prefer Sikhs. At least my girlfriend that's Sikh does. Served a meal every day for all the attendees. It was an amazing thing to see. It was this free thing where they had thousands of people they fed, and it was a vegetarian meal every day during Parliament. I was so struck by that, the beauty of this, and just realized actions like that are just, they change the world. So, but yeah, Parliament was really lovely. It was my first, so.
That's amazing. And of course, Lee is saying, and I think we both agree with him.
I always believe so too. Oh, Lee, you'll have to send me something later. We got to talk.
That's cute. And yes, Lee, his social channel is inspired by that. Yes, compassion. And I know Lee personally. So thanks for watching. Yes, he's compassion for all, right? And sometimes it's more expansive. And I think that when we kind of expand out of the vegan bubble, but to all, right, more than veganism, but this it's more than the food, and not just the food, but I mean more really in tune with the earth and every living being, respectful to every living being. So there's so many people to talk to, and so many ways we can get the message out. So in your life, I will have to find out what you're doing in the next 5 years. Who knows where you'll be?
Yes. No, I know it keeps changing. And Lee, I'm not sure I can answer you. I'm trying to do that, but I'd love to connect with you and be on your channel. That sounds lovely. And yeah, I think you're right though. This is all beings. I think for me it is. That's it just, there is no, and it has expanded to trees and leaves. And I think when you and I talked, Mikita, I took a class on earth hospice and spent time with a tree for that class that had been cut down, and just, it's a beautiful world, and our attention to all of it is so important. And so, yeah, I appreciate the fact that you brought the earth into the discussion too.
I love that. Yes. And so when of course we can't leave out the earth, because our beautiful creatures need the earth so desperately. They need Mother Earth to thrive. And if we're cutting down the trees and destroying the planet, they don't have a planet, and they're the purest of all. So I love what you're saying about the earth hospice.
Well, it's interesting. This is on that point. I was at a national park this summer, And some of the national parks now are putting up signs to knock off the cairn building that people do with stones, where they take stones, because every one of those stones is likely someone's home, or some part of it's part, and every time we move something, we've just transformed that little microcosm of a community in ways we don't intend. I mean, clearly people mean well with those, but I saw a couple signs this summer and I thought that's really interesting that they're saying, really leave the stones, leave everything as it is, and let all those little beings be and enjoy them without moving their homes around.
I know. I love to hear that. That we need to be more aware. So it's beautiful that the parks are doing that.
Yeah, because sometimes it feels innocent. And it's more about just being made aware, like, wait a minute, I never really thought about that. Because I looked at the sign and thought, that's so interesting. And yet with my Earth Hospice class, I remember thinking I would take a part of that little tree that was left, one of the shavings, home to put on my desk so that I would just remember that tree. And I went to pick it up and there were all these little ants under it. And I thought, nope, it's not mine. It needs to go back. So, yeah, but it was well intentioned, and I thought it would be a lovely, Though I thought, no, we got to be much more cognizant of the fact that everything I move is moving. It's changing something else. So, yeah.
Right. Yes, everything is connected in ways that we're not even aware of, in ways that we can't always see.
Right. It's sort of that. Sometimes I'll liken that to like a baby mobile that on a bed, you pull one of those little things down and everything else is bouncing. So it's just a reminder that everything we do, we are even unintentionally affecting others. And so how can we lighten our footprint and increase the peace of everyone with whom we come encounter in the day. So
Definitely. Well, I wanted to remind everyone here to go to www.all-creatures.org and check out the hundreds of thousands of pages of free resources updated daily, 7 days a week without break. And sign up for our weekly newsletter, and be sure to search vegan churches on our site to find vegan faith-based resources near you. And if you know of a resource not on our list, contact our executive director, Tams, at all-creatures.org. And Reverend Ginny, remind us again where for the meeting tonight, where people.
Yeah, just be sure you can email me, Ginny at animalblessings.love. And I also want to I'm not sure if this is on your resource list, but Compassion Consortium has a monthly service, monthly worship service. Worship is kind of a broadly used term, but it is a beautiful service that is almost entirely devoted to our more than human animal world. So it's a nice alternative if there's not a church in your area, or even if there is. So
that's very true. Compassion Consortium is an amazing place, and we're actually going to be interviewing Reverend Carol Saunders next week. So
good. Yeah.
So perfect. So actually, I would like to say a little prayer to end this, if that's all right with you, Reverend Ginny. Is there anything else you wanted to share with our audience?
No, other than just thank you so much for having me on. And Lee, I hope we'll connect afterwards. And yeah, thank you so much, Mikita, for having me.
Well, thank you. And thanks, JJ, for watching, and everybody watching on the replay. And make sure the links are should be in, well, here's the link right there, www.animalblessings.love. So, all right. So if everybody feels like closing their eyes or just taking a deep breath and just breathing in this divine experience and giving thanks for the love that has been shared in this circle, and just feeling the winds of the trees blowing, and the air flowing through the earth and the rain showering us with their love. Just feeling that in this moment and giving thanks for all of divinity, for each one of us today, for our beautiful contributions to this earth. Just holding that in a sacred space in our hearts. Amen. Well, thank you all. I love you all. Bye-bye, everyone. Thank you.
Okay.